Is measles the secret to curing cancer? A young girl comments on a vaccine video claiming that her grandma's doctor, her grandma has cancer, told her grandma it's a shame she got the measles vaccine when she was younger because if she hadn't, she could contract measles now and it would cure her cancer. This is false. But I know the study that this information comes from. There are oncology researchers that are currently trying to genetically modify certain viruses so that they will attack only cancer cells. They've done this with several strains of flu and measles. The idea is that the virus would invade the body, attack the cancer cells and not the healthy cells, so then the person would be cancer-free. Because of the way that measles invades the body, they decided to do this with measles on 2 women with bone marrow cancer. These women were injected with 10,000 units of measles, so far more than any one vaccine or what you would contract by yourself. And keep in mind, this is not measles, this is modified. So it's not even the measles you would get infected with. Long story short, both their tumors shrank initially, but then 2 weeks later, one started to grow again. 9 months later, the other one had cancer again. So no, you can't cure cancer with measles. So is there a link between vaccines and autism? A man named Andrew Wakefield published a study examining a link between the MMR vaccine specifically and increasing rates of autism in British children. Here's the thing though. There was a conflict of financial interest, there were unethical practices done, and there were procedural errors in his study, which means his results were totally invalid. But it caught people's attention, and people thought, holy crap, is there a link? So hundreds of studies were conducted with not just MMR vaccine, but every vaccine that we have to see if there's any link between vaccines and autism. They found no such link. Plus, I mean, vaccinated and unvaccinated autism rates are the same. Since then, though, as we've studied autism and tried to figure out why it comes about, we found there's actually a genetic component to autism, not vaccines. And now that we have the technology to do so, we can actually see autism developing in a fetus, long before a needle ever pokes a sweet, precious little thigh. So now we can definitively say vaccines do not have anything to do with autism. Vaccines are full of all kinds of nasty toxins. Well, formaldehyde is one people really have a problem with and it really concerns them, but the amount of formaldehyde that's in a vaccine is actually less than the formaldehyde that's already in your body because formaldehyde is a natural byproduct of your body's metabolic processes. Mercury is another one. It was actually removed from several vaccines. So you don't even have to worry about mercury. It's in some in trace amounts, but here's the thing. It's not harmful. It's like water. If you have water in a small enough amount, like say just a glass, that's going to do good for things for your body. But if you sit and drink 10 gallons of water, your cells will literally drown and it will kill you. Mercury in a large enough amount will kill you. But in the amount of a vaccine, not harmful at all. In fact, it's a little bit beneficial since it helps your body fight off diseases. Keep in mind, there's toxins in everything. This is full of toxins. 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 Do you feed your kids ketchup? Toxins. And if you're still concerned, do a Google search because there are dozens, if not hundreds, of vaccine detoxes. Is it safe to inject little tiny babies with as many vaccines as we do at one time? Wouldn't it be safer to do a more spaced out vaccine schedule? At one point, I thought so. Well, we know that newborn babies at birth have 10,000 antibodies inside their body. They can fight off 10,000 viruses. And they do fight off most viruses without even a sign or a symptom. Think about everything that maybe you step on and gets tracked inside your house on a day-to-day basis, or things your older children might be bringing home from school, or things your child might be picking up when they're putting things in their mouth all the time. And yet they rarely get sick because their body's fighting those things off. So the 3, 6, 9, however many shots they're getting at one time, especially if you're playing catch-up, is negligible. 9 viruses versus 10,000 antibodies. I mean, come on. So rest easy. Your child will be fine. They can handle it. Vaccines don't even work. Like, we're healthier now because we have better hygiene practices, right? Kinda, yeah. But also no. Let's take measles, for example. In 1963, where our hygiene was not any worse than it is today, we had approximately 400,000 cases of measles, and that is also the year we developed the vaccine. Well, within 7 years, by 1970, our measles cases dropped to 25,000 a year. No difference in hygiene, yet we had less disease. In China in the late 70s and 80s, there was a huge press for whooping cough vaccine, and they were super strict about everybody getting the whooping cough vaccine. And they managed to get their cases down to less than 300 a year. Well, then they started to slack off because they got comfortable because their cases dropped, and within a year, their cases jumped up to 8,000. There was no significant hygiene practice changes within a year. That was solely because of the vaccine. So yeah, our better hygiene practices do make us healthier overall now, but we also can thank vaccines for that. In the year 1900, flu, TB, GI infections, and diphtheria were the #1 causes of death. In 2010, the #1 causes of death were heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and accidents. Do you know why that changed? Vaccines. In the year 1800, the infant mortality rate was 40%. It means 40% of babies didn't make it to age 5. In 1950, the infant mortality rate was only about 20%. 20% of babies didn't make it to age 5. That decrease is thanks to better hygiene. However, between 1950 and present day, the infant mortality rate is now between 1 and 3% worldwide. And what is it that changed between 1950 and now? We've exponentially increased the amount of vaccinations that we have. So we can thank vaccines for the fact that we get to see our children reach age kindergarten. Okay, but I don't want to get a vaccine because I don't want to get sick. Every time I get the flu shot, I get the flu. True or false? That's false. Let me explain how your immune system works. The symptoms you get when you're sick, such as fever, runny nose, coughing, sneezing, those are not the virus that are doing those things. That's actually your immune system doing those things. That's so your body's way of killing off the virus or expelling it from your body to get better. So yes, sometimes you get these symptoms and you get a vaccine because then your body's doing what it's supposed to do and developing an immunity to that virus. The vaccine isn't what's making you sick. That's your body's natural response to anything foreign and it trying to fight it off. So if you get a little bit of the sniffles after you get a vaccine, you didn't just develop the flu. Your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to do and is developing an immunities now that it's got the vaccine. Thankfully, these symptoms last much longer than the actual illness does, and they're much more mild. Some people are legitimately allergic to vaccines. Some people get a vaccine and they have a full-blown dangerous allergic reaction to it. Here's the thing though, if you had a legitimate allergic reaction, they probably would have caught it in the doctor's office, and then you're going to go to see an allergist because they're going to figure out what it was you were allergic to. For a couple reasons. One, there's probably other vaccines you can take without that ingredient, and two, you kind of need to know for your day-to-day life. So you know what you're allergic to. And then if you are legitimately allergic, they'll find out what it is, and then you have two options. The first option is get a different vaccine for the same thing. Just get one that doesn't have your allergen in it. Because multiple companies make vaccines for the same virus. Kind of like how we have the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine for COVID. They have slightly different ingredients. So for example, if you're allergic to the egg protein in one of the vaccines that you got, you can just get a version with gelatin protein instead next time. Another option that some people actually do is they'll get the vaccine in an allergist's office so they can immediately treat the anaphylactic shock that will result, so that the person can get vaccines without actually being in danger. So talk to your doctor. You have options. Do you know you can look up every single time there's been a negative reaction to a vaccine? It's called VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. And it keeps track of every negative thing that is reported after somebody's been injected with the vaccine. However, remember to take those numbers with a grain of salt because correlation does not always equal causation. For example, if I get the flu shot and then I go and I get in a car accident and I die, the flu shot didn't cause me to die. That being said, since 1990, hundreds of millions of people have been vaccinated. Since 1990, about 1,800 people have died within a week of getting a vaccine. The math comes out to being you have about a 1 in 100,000 chance of dying within a week of getting a vaccine. Doesn't mean the vaccine killed you, but that you could die within a week of getting one. Now, if you contract measles, you have a 1 in 500 chance of dying versus that 1 in 100,000. The flu is a 1 in 5,000 chance versus that 1 in 100,000. If you are not vaccinated against whooping cough and you catch it, you have a 1 in 200 chance of dying. I'll never say vaccines come with zero risk. You'll never hear me say that. But they come with less risk than the diseases do. If COVID has a 99% survival rate, why should I get a vaccine? First of all, it's approximately a 97.8 survival rate, okay? Not 99. Second of all, because there's a difference between surviving and thriving. Lots of people who are even asymptomatic with COVID actually end up having damage to their heart, lungs, and or brain. So you can have COVID, have no symptoms, and your body still go undergo damage, which at this point is long-term damage. Also, the COVID vaccine is 95% effective at giving you immunity to COVID, whereas if you catch COVID, you don't necessarily gain immunity to COVID. People are immune for about up to 90 days after they've caught COVID, and at that point, they can catch it again. So your body can repeatedly undergo damage to your heart, lungs, and or brain if you just catch COVID. And that's if you survive it. So yeah, I think I'd rather get the vaccine than go through that multiple times. COVID vaccine was developed in less than a year, so I don't know if I trust it. Does that sound familiar? Here's the thing though, it was only developed in less than a year because it finally had funding. We discovered mRNA technology 30 years ago. We've been studying it for over 20 years. So there are literally decades of research that went into this vaccine. It's not something we just whipped up right away. In fact, scientists have been working on a coronavirus vaccine since the MERS and SARS outbreaks, but funding dried up. COVID hit, They got their funding back. They were able to finish the process and get a vaccine developed for COVID. All it is they inject into your arm instructions to your body to make an antibody for a spike protein, because spike protein is what is on the outside of the coronavirus. Your cells replicate that. They're so proud of what they did, they show it off, and then your white blood cells develop antibodies for it. And that's it. The instructions they initially injected are destroyed. Your body now knows how to fight off COVID. It's all hunky-dory. And this is going to lead to a lot more vaccines. Yay! Did you know that the new COVID vaccine contains nanotechnology? Lots of people are freaking out about this, but they clearly don't understand what nanotechnology means. It just means they're working with stuff like at a molecular level. That's literally all it means. Doesn't mean they're injecting you with microchips. They're not injecting you with like little nanobots. Nanotechnology is in the lipids that are included in the vaccine. What are lipids? Fat. And this nanotechnology is part of the reason why we were finally able to create this vaccine. But no, there's no microchip in the vaccine. There's no technology that's going into you that is going to track you or anything like that. And bonus points for the COVID vaccine, it does not include any aluminum, mercury, or food allergens. So less people will have a reaction to the COVID vaccine than have reactions to other vaccines.